It was the kind of friendship that seemed unshakable, one of those bonds where you know everything about the other person, every secret, every silly habit, every inside joke. I had known Lisa since middle school, and over the years, we became inseparable. Her house was like my second home, and I had spent countless afternoons there, doing homework together, watching movies, or just chatting about life. But there was one person in Lisa's life that always kept me on edge: her older brother, Jason. Jason was your typical older sibling, charming, athletic, and with a laid-back attitude that made him easy to get along with. But he was also a bit of a mystery to me. While I got along with him fine, I never really thought much about him beyond that. He was just Lisa's older brother after all. That is, until things started to change. It began with small things, moments that I couldn't quite place at first. He'd linger a little too long when he passed by me, or our conversations would take an odd turn. It wasn't that Jason had ever been overly flirtatious or strange before, but now he seemed different. There was something about the way he looked at me, the way his voice lingered a little too long when he said my name. I tried to ignore it at first, thinking maybe I was just reading too much into things. After all, I had known him for years, and this was just his way of being friendly, right? But the more it happened, the more I started to question my own assumptions. Was I imagining things? Or was something bigger happening here? As I spent more time with Lisa and Jason, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was changing. And when I finally confronted him about it, I was not prepared for the shocking truth he was about to reveal. For Omini, you said, rising tension, Chad said, Chad rising tension. As the days passed, Jason's behavior continued to shift in subtle but noticeable ways. At first, I brushed it off as nothing more than my overactive imagination playing tricks on me. But then, there were moments I couldn't ignore. We'd all hang out at the living room, and when Lisa would leave to grab snacks or go to her room, Jason would suddenly find excuses to sit next to me, just a little too close for comfort. His casual touches, like the brief brush of his hand against mine when he passed me the remote, seemed deliberate, like he was testing the waters. At first, I laughed it off, attributing it to his usual jokey, laid-back personality. But every time I glanced at him, I saw his eyes lingering a little too long, and his smile seemed to have an edge to it that wasn't there before. It was almost as though he was trying to get under my skin in a way that I couldn't quite define. One night, after a movie marathon at Lisa's, the tension reached its peak. Lisa had fallen asleep on the couch, leaving Jason and me alone in the living room. Normally, this wouldn't have been an issue, but tonight, the atmosphere felt different. I sat up, stretching as I attempted to avoid the awkward silence that had descended between us. Jason cleared his throat, breaking the silence, and his voice sounded lower, almost hesitant. "Hey, can I talk to you about something?" he asked, shifting in his seat. I nodded, trying to sound casual. "Of course, what's up?" His gaze dropped, then slowly made its way back to mine. "It's just, I've been noticing something lately, and I think it's time I tell you." He hesitated again, his words hanging in the air. A knot formed in my stomach. I had no idea where this conversation was heading, but the weight in his eyes told me it wasn't going to be good. "I've been thinking about you a lot lately," Jason continued, his voice now a little softer, almost hesitant, but also filled with an intensity I hadn't heard before. "And I can't ignore it anymore. There's something I need to say." My heart pounded in my chest, and for a moment, I didn't know whether to laugh it off or flee from the room. This was Jason, Lisa's brother, someone I had known for years. What was he saying? What did he mean? I swallowed hard, hoping I was misinterpreting his words. Jason shifted closer to me, his gaze never leaving mine. The air between us felt charged, the space between us shrinking with every passing second. I think I've started seeing you in a different light, and I can't pretend like I don't feel this way anymore." I froze, the world around me feeling distant as the reality of what he was saying hit me. I had always seen Jason as family, but now, with his confession hanging in the air, the lines between us began to blur in a way I wasn't prepared for. The room felt suddenly suffocating, and I wasn't sure if I should push him away or run for the door. This wasn't the Jason I had known all these years. This was someone completely different, someone whose intentions I wasn't sure I could trust. The tension in the air was so thick I could almost taste it. In that moment. I realized that everything between us was about to change. Jason's words hung in the air like a heavy fog, each syllable sinking into my mind, making it harder to breathe. I could feel my heart racing as I tried to process what was happening. This wasn't just an innocent comment, this was something far more complicated. His eyes were fixed on me now, an intensity in them I hadn't seen before, vulnerable yet determined, as if he was finally revealing a truth he'd been hiding for too long. I took a shaky breath, trying to steady myself. "Jason, what are you saying?" My voice sounded strained, barely above a whisper. The words felt alien coming from my lips, as if they didn't belong in this situation. He leaned in closer, and I instinctively took a small step back, my hands gripping the edge of the couch. "I'm saying that I care about you more than just a friend," he confessed, his voice lower now, almost a plea. "I know it's complicated. I know it's wrong, but I can't help how I feel." I was paralyzed, stuck between the pull of his words and the confusion flooding my mind. It felt surreal, like I was trapped in some strange dream, the edges of my thoughts blurry. Was this really happening? Jason, my best friend's brother, the guy I had grown up with, was confessing his feelings for me. Every part of me screamed that this wasn't right. I had known him for years, had seen him as a brother, and now suddenly, everything had shifted into a dangerous territory I wasn't prepared for. I opened my mouth to protest, to tell him this was insane, but no words came out. Jason wasn't finished, though. "I've been fighting it for so long, trying to ignore it, but every time I see you, I can't stop thinking about you. I think about what it would be like to be with you. In every way." He took a deep breath, his gaze softening, but his words still held that sharp, urgent edge. "I've never felt this way before, and I don't expect you to feel the same, but I need you to know the truth. I don't want to hide it anymore." His confession was like a bomb, shattering everything I thought I knew about our relationship. It was as if the ground beneath me had cracked open, leaving me standing on the edge of something I couldn't even begin to understand. My mind was a whirlwind of conflicting thoughts. Part of me wanted to push him away, to scream at him that this was wrong, but another part of me couldn't ignore the raw honesty in his eyes. I opened my mouth again, struggling to find the right words, but before I could speak, Jason reached out, his hand gently brushing against mine. The contact sent a shockwave of heat through my body, and I froze, my skin tingling where his fingers touched. For a moment, all I could think about was how close we were, too close, and how badly I wanted to pull away. But I couldn't move. He slowly moved his hand up, gently cupping my cheek, his thumb brushing over my skin in a way that felt almost too intimate. His touch was tentative at first, like he wasn't sure if I'd pull away, but I stayed frozen, caught in the intensity of the moment. My breath hitched and I could feel the tension building between us, thickening the air in the room. "I know you probably think this is crazy," Jason murmured, his voice barely audible now, "but I can't help how I feel." The room was spinning. My mind screamed for me to stop this before it went any further, but the truth was I didn't know what to do. His presence, his touch, it was overwhelming. Every part of me wanted to push him away, but another part of me, one that I wasn't ready to admit, was tempted to let it happen. The world around us seemed to fade, leaving just the two of us in this charged, suspended moment. Would I push him away and preserve everything we'd known? Or would I let this moment change everything forever? The weight of the moment pressed down on me, and I felt an overwhelming sense of confusion. Jason's hand was still resting on my cheek, his thumb now tracing small, almost imperceptible circles on my skin. It felt like time had slowed down, the seconds dragging on endlessly as my heart pounded in my chest. I wanted to speak, to make sense of what was happening, but the words seemed to escape me. For a moment, I closed my eyes, trying to clear my mind, to regain some semblance of control. But the feeling of Jason's hand on my skin lingered, and every thought I tried to gather scattered, lost in the rush of emotions swirling around inside me. I could feel the tension between us, an invisible force pulling us together and yet pushing me away all at once. I took a deep breath and finally opened my eyes, meeting his gaze. There was vulnerability in his expression, raw, desperate vulnerability, and I knew he was waiting for me to react, to say something, anything. My heart ached at the sight of him, caught between the boy I had known for years and this new unfamiliar side of him that was now exposed, bare and honest. Jason, I don't know what to say, I stammered, my voice unsteady.